Welcome to True.
The Untold History of Scissors, the ancient tool in your drawer. Introduction. You've used them today, maybe to open a package, cut a tag off new clothes, or trim a loose thread. They're sitting in your kitchen drawer, on your desk, in your bathroom cabinet. Scissors. So simple, so ordinary, so forgettable. But what if I told you that the scissors in your hand right now are the result of 3,500 years of human innovation? That ancient Egyptian barbers used them to trim the pharaoh's hair? That Roman sheep shearers carried them across empires? That for thousands of years, scissors were so valuable they were passed down as family heirlooms? Today, we take scissors for granted. We buy them for a few dollars and throw them away when they get dull. But the story of how humanity invented, perfected, and spread this tool across every civilization on Earth is nothing short of extraordinary. This is the untold history of scissors. Chapter 1. The problem that needed solving. Before we can understand the genius of scissors, we need to understand the problem ancient humans faced. How do you cut things? For tens of thousands of years, our ancestors relied on stone blades, sharp flints, and eventually bronze knives. These tools worked fine for hunting, butchering animals, and cutting leather, but they had serious limitations. Try cutting fabric with a knife, try trimming your hair with a blade, try shaping a piece of cloth into clothing with just a sharp edge. It's nearly impossible to get precision. You need one hand to hold the material taut and another to saw back and forth with the blade. The cuts are jagged, uneven, dangerous. Ancient civilizations needed a better solution. The Egyptians were weaving intricate linen garments. The Mesopotamians were creating elaborate textiles. The early Bronze Age peoples were working with materials that required precise, controlled cuts. The knife wasn't enough anymore. Humanity needed something revolutionary. Chapter 2. The First Scissors. Ancient Egypt, 1500 BC. Around 1500 BC, in the workshops of ancient Egypt, someone had a brilliant idea. What if, instead of using one blade, you used two? What if those two blades could move against each other, creating a shearing action? What if you could control both blades with one hand? The earliest scissors looked nothing like what you have in your drawer today. They were called spring scissors, or shears, and they were made from a single piece of bronze bent into a U-shape. Picture this. Take a thin strip of bronze metal, heat it until it's malleable, bend it in the middle to create a curve, like a long, thin letter U. Sharpen the two ends so they form blades. When you squeeze the two arms together, the blades cross and cut. When you release, the natural spring of the metal makes them open again. These spring scissors were revolutionary. For the first time in human history, you could make precise, controlled cuts with one hand. Egyptian barbers used them to trim hair and beards. Textile workers used them to cut linen and papyrus. Artisans used them for detailed craft work. Archaeologists have found these bronze spring scissors in Egyptian tombs, buried with their owners because they were considered valuable enough to take into the afterlife. Think about that. These weren't disposable tools. These were prized possessions. But spring scissors had a major flaw. They required constant hand pressure. Your hand would cramp after extended use. The spring mechanism would weaken over time. The Egyptians had invented scissors, but the design was far from perfect. The real revolution was still centuries away. Chapter 3. The Roman Innovation Pivot Scissors. Around 100 AD, in the workshops of the Roman Empire, someone made a modification that would change scissors forever. Instead of using a single bent piece of metal, Roman blacksmiths began forging scissors from two separate blades, joined by a pivot point in the middle. This was the birth of pivot scissors, the design we still use today, over 2,000 years later. The genius of this design is elegant. Two blades, one pivot point, usually a screw or rivet. Each blade has a handle loop. When you put your fingers through the loops and squeeze, the blades cross at the pivot point, creating a powerful shearing action. This design solved every problem the spring scissors had. No more hand cramping, the pivot did the work. More cutting power leverage from the handles. Better precision-controlled movements around a fixed point. Durability, stronger construction, easier to repair. Roman scissors were works of art. Blacksmiths forged them from iron and steel, carefully tempering the blades for the perfect hardness. They decorated the handles with bronze inlays, silver embellishments, and intricate patterns. Wealthy Romans carried ornate scissors as status symbols. But more importantly, Romans found countless uses for their new tool. Barbers used them in the public baths. Sheep shearers used massive versions to harvest wool, the backbone of the Roman textile economy. Soldiers carried small scissors for trimming leather straps and repairing equipment. Scribes used tiny, precise scissors for cutting parchment. Archaeological digs across the former Roman Empire have uncovered hundreds of pivot scissors. In Britain, in Spain, in North Africa, in the Middle East, everywhere the Romans went, scissors followed. They weren't just spreading an empire, they were spreading technology. Chapter 4. The Medieval Craft Scissors as Treasure. After the fall of Rome, Europe entered the medieval period, and scissors took on a new significance. They became symbols of craft guilds and professional identity. In medieval Europe, scissors were expensive. A good pair of iron scissors could cost the equivalent of several days' wages for a common laborer. They were tools, yes, but they were also investments, heirlooms, and marks of professional status. Different craftspeople required different scissors. Tailors needed long, sharp blades for cutting multiple layers of fabric. Barbers needed shorter, more maneuverable scissors for detailed haircuts. Scribes needed tiny, precise scissors for trimming parchment and vellum. Sheep shearers needed enormous, powerful shears for wool. Surgeons needed specialized medical scissors for cutting bandages and occasionally performing procedures. Medieval blacksmiths became specialists in scissor making. In cities like Sheffield, England, and Solingen, Germany, entire guild systems developed around blade making and scissor crafting. These weren't mass-produced items. Each pair was hand-forged, carefully sharpened, and built to last decades. The quality of your scissors indicated your social status. Wealthy merchants and nobles carried ornately decorated scissors hanging from their belts on decorative chains, both a tool and a piece of jewelry. Poor peasants might share a single pair of scissors among an entire village. Scissors were so valuable that they appeared in wills and inheritance documents. I leave to my daughter my silver scissors. I bequeath to my apprentice my master's shears. These weren't just tools, they were treasures. Chapter 5. The Islamic Golden Age. Damascus steel scissors. While Europe was in its medieval period, the Islamic world was experiencing a golden age of science, mathematics, and craftsmanship, and they took scissors to an entirely new level. In Damascus, Syria, metalworkers perfected a legendary steelmaking process that produced blades of extraordinary quality. Damascus steel was stronger, sharper, and more flexible than any metal Europe could produce, and they used it to make scissors. Damascus steel scissors were prized possessions throughout the medieval world. The distinctive wavy pattern of the steel made each pair unique. The blades could be sharpened to a razor edge, and would hold that edge for years. They were so superior to European scissors that they became valuable trade goods, traveling along the Silk Road from Damascus to China, India, and Europe. Islamic craftsmen also innovated in scissor design. They created specialized medical scissors for surgery, something European surgeons wouldn't widely adopt for centuries. They developed embroidery scissors with curved blades for intricate needlework. They even created spring-loaded scissors that combined the ancient Egyptian design with medieval metallurgy. But perhaps their greatest contribution was knowledge. Islamic scholars wrote detailed treatises on metallurgy, blade making, and tool crafting. These texts preserved and expanded upon Roman and Greek knowledge that had been lost in Europe. When these works were eventually translated into Latin during the Renaissance, they revolutionized European scissor making. Chapter 6. The Industrial Revolution. Scissors for everyone. For thousands of years, scissors were handmade, expensive, and relatively rare, but in the 18th and 19th centuries, everything changed. The Industrial Revolution transformed scissors from a craftsman's tool to a mass-produced commodity. This shift began in Sheffield, England, already famous for its blade making, where inventors developed machines that could stamp out scissor blades from sheet steel. Before industrialization, a master blacksmith might forge a few pairs of scissors per week. With the new machines, factories could produce hundreds of pairs per day. The price of scissors plummeted. Suddenly, scissors weren't luxuries, they were household items. Every home could afford multiple pairs. Schoolchildren brought scissors to class. Sewing became accessible to millions of women who could now afford proper shears. Barbers and tailors could outfit their shops with specialized scissors for every task. The The variety of scissors exploded. Pinking shears with serrated edges to prevent fabric fraying, nail scissors with curved blades, kitchen scissors strong enough to cut through bone, left-handed scissors, finally, children's safety scissors with rounded tips, surgical scissors with dozens of specialized designs, industrial scissors for cutting metal, plastic, rubber. But industrialization came with a cost. The master craftsmen, who had spent decades perfecting their art, found themselves competing with factories. The guild system collapsed. The personal relationship between maker and user disappeared. Scissors became disposable. Why repair a broken pair when you could buy a new one for pennies? The ancient tradition of passing scissors down through generations faded away. Chapter 7. Specialized Scissors, a tool for every purpose. By the 20th century, scissors had become so common that innovation focused on specialization. Engineers and designers created scissors for incredibly specific tasks. Medical scissors became a universe unto themselves. Surgeons use iris scissors for delicate eye surgery, Mayo scissors for cutting heavy tissue, Metzenbaum scissors for cutting delicate tissue, bandage scissors with a blunt tip to slide under bandages without cutting skin, trauma shears that can cut through leather, denim, even seatbelts. Hairdressing scissors evolved into precision instruments. Professional hairstylists use straight scissors for basic cutting, thinning shears with teeth to reduce bulk, texturizing scissors for creating layers, swivel scissors with rotating handles to reduce wrist strain. Industrial scissors got bigger and more powerful. Aviation snips that can cut sheet metal, bolt cutters with compound leverage, industrial fabric shears for cutting multiple layers, electric scissors for cutting carpet and upholstery. And then there are the weird, wonderful, and oddly specific scissors. Pizza scissors with a spatula attachment, herb scissors with 5 parallel blades, grape scissors for cutting individual grapes from the bunch, Victorian luxury item, cigar scissors for cutting the perfect opening, wick trimmers shaped like scissors for candles, bonsai scissors for precisely pruning miniature trees. Today, there are literally hundreds of types of scissors, each optimized for a specific task. The simple cutting tool invented 3,500 years ago has spawned an entire ecosystem of specialized designs. Chapter 8. The Science of Scissors, Why They Work. Let's talk about why scissors are such a brilliant invention from a physics and engineering perspective. Scissors work on a principle called shearing force. When you cut something with a knife, you're essentially wedging the blade through the material, separating it by brute force. But when you cut with scissors, you're doing something much more elegant. The two blades of scissors slide against each other at a slight angle. This creates a shearing action where the material is caught between two opposing forces. The material doesn't have anywhere to go, so it splits along the line where the blades meet. This is why sharp scissors can cut through materials that would defeat a knife. The shearing action is simply more efficient than wedging. But there's more genius in the design. The pivot point creates leverage. When you squeeze the handles, the force is multiplied at the blade tips. The further the pivot is from your fingers, the more leverage you get, but the less cutting force at the tip. This is why different scissors have different designs. It's all about optimizing the leverage for the material you're cutting. The angle of the blades matters too. If the blades were perfectly parallel, they wouldn't cut, they'd just squeeze the material. If they were too angled, they'd push the material away. The ideal angle, usually around 2-5 degrees, creates the perfect balance of shearing force and blade contact. Even the shape of the blade is carefully engineered. Scissors for cutting paper have straight edges. Scissors for cutting fabric have slightly curved blades to prevent the fabric from sliding away. Scissors for cutting wire have short, thick blades to handle the force. Modern scissors are marvels of materials science. The best scissors use high-carbon stainless steel, carefully heat-treated to achieve the perfect balance of hardness, so they hold an edge, and flexibility, so they don't break. The pivot screw is precisely tensioned too loose, and the blades slip too tight and they bind. There's a reason scissors have barely changed in 2,000 years. The Romans basically perfected the design. Chapter 9. Cultural Significance. Scissors in Society. Scissors aren't just tools. They're cultural symbols that appear in folklore, superstition, religion, and art across every civilization. In many cultures, scissors carry superstitious significance. In European folklore, leaving scissors open was considered bad luck, an invitation for evil spirits. Dropping scissors meant a visitor was coming. In some traditions, scissors should never be given as a gift without receiving a coin in return to pay for them and avoid cutting the relationship. Scissors appear in religious and ceremonial contexts. The cutting of the ribbon ceremony, used for everything from store openings to political events, symbolizes the beginning of something new. The ancient Romans had scissor makers, who were respected craftsmen with their own guild and religious associations. In art and symbolism, scissors represent fate and destiny. The Greek Fates, 3 goddesses who controlled human destiny, included Atropos, who cut the thread of life with her shears. This image has appeared in art, literature, and philosophy for thousands of years. Scissors have been used as symbols of profession and identity. A tailor's coat of arms would feature scissors. Barbers displayed crossed scissors outside their shops. Even today, the scissors emoji is universally recognized. There's something deeply human about scissors. They represent control, precision, the ability to cut away what we don't want and shape what remains. They appear in our language: cut it out, cutting ties, cutting through the noise. Metaphors of cutting pervade human communication. Chapter 10. Modern Innovations, the Future of Scissors. You might think scissors are so simple that there's no room for innovation. You'd be wrong. In recent decades, engineers have developed some fascinating improvements to the ancient design. Ergonomic scissors. Modern scissors use soft grip handles, offset handles that align with your natural grip, and spring-loaded mechanisms that reduce hand strain. Professional hairstylists can now work for hours without developing repetitive stress injuries. Advanced materials. Titanium-coated scissors that never need sharpening, ceramic scissors for people with metal allergies, carbon fiber scissors that are incredibly light yet strong. Each material offers different benefits. Precision engineering. The best scissors today are manufactured to tolerances of thousandths of an inch. Laser cutting creates perfectly matched blades. Computer-controlled sharpening creates edges sharper than surgical scalpels. Specialized coatings, non-stick coatings for cutting tape and adhesives, antimicrobial coatings for medical scissors, rust-resistant coatings for kitchen and outdoor use. But perhaps the most interesting modern development is the smart scissors used in surgery. These scissors have pressure sensors that prevent the surgeon from cutting too deep. Some have built-in cauterization to seal blood vessels as they cut. Others have microscopic cameras in the handles to give surgeons better visualization. There's even research into molecular scissors, CRISPR gene editing technology that acts like scissors at the DNA level, cutting and modifying genetic code. The metaphor of scissors is so powerful that scientists borrowed it to describe cutting-edge biotechnology. Conclusion: the tool that shaped civilization. Think about what we've discovered in this journey through scissor history. 3,500 years ago, an anonymous Egyptian craftsman bent a piece of bronze and created the first scissors. Roman engineers perfected the pivot design 2,000 years ago. Medieval craftsmen turned scissor making into an art form. Islamic scientists advanced the metallurgy. Industrial Revolution factories made scissors available to everyone. Modern engineers continue to innovate and improve. But scissors are more than just a tool. They represent humanity's endless drive to solve problems, to improve, to refine. Every time you pick up scissors to open a package, cut wrapping paper, trim your hair, or clip a coupon, you're using technology that has been tested, refined, and perfected over millennia. The scissors in your hand are the culmination of thousands of years of human innovation. The ancient Egyptians would recognize your scissors. They'd understand immediately how they work. They'd be amazed by the steel, the precision, the low cost, but they'd recognize the fundamental principle. 2 blades, 1 pivot, endless possibilities. That's the power of truly great design. It transcends time. It transcends culture. It becomes so perfectly adapted to its purpose that it barely needs to change. The next time you reach for scissors, take a moment to appreciate what you're holding. You're not just grabbing a tool from your drawer. You're connecting to 3,500 years of human history, ingenuity, and craftsmanship. You're holding a small piece of civilization itself. And that's the untold story of scissors, the ancient invention hiding in plain sight, waiting in your drawer, ready to serve you just as it served pharaohs, emperors, craftsmen, and billions of people across human history.